Okay, everyone, this is Tan Sanferma. We have a Brilliance in Commerce show for you today. And as you know, we are helping to protect people. We're moving the world towards a little bit less of the craziness that has been blanketing the earth for the last several thousand years, moving people more into a free life, free from interferences, and educating light beings, those who are working for a better world, in asset protection secrets known previously only by the super rich. And so it is time for all of us to know this information, to put it into practice, and do so in a way in harmony with the laws of the universe, in a way that harms no one and simply protects good things from the access of those who would misuse it, and therefore perhaps move more of these resources into equitable use for the distribution of life-supporting influences worldwide. Now, I wish to share with you just a little bit of announcement before we get started. We have here, basically, we have some of the activities of Brilliance in Commerce, a project of La Vérité, which is French for the truth, and House of Freedom International Natural Law Trust, Liberty Debt Elimination System, affiliations with special offers. We have in the past looked into all kinds of things, cryptocurrencies, wealth from your FICO score, credit repair. We have some outsource on that are excellent, gold purchasing concierge, and actually a cryptocurrency that is gold backed. We've been sending newsletters about that. For those of you who subscribe to the newsletter, you know. Offshore asset protection, Monaco Management Group, Mark Emery and his group, wealth management, and so on. I have a little bit of suffering and happiness to share. I've been the problems. I've had the challenges of the state and the banks, just like everyone else. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. I've been invited to a few things like Board of Advisors, Monaco Management Group, had a lot of radio shows, enjoyed those very much, still do some once in a while. A book, Sovereignty Consciousness, came out in '97. Cosmic Renaissance is forthcoming. We have Trust Webinar Series moving into place today, April 11th, 2018, and then the next May 9th, 2018, and June 6th. So approximately once a month, we are proceeding with these trust webinars, and occasionally we may do other topics on our Zoom show as well. We really appreciate all of you being here. In the past, we've enjoyed a fellowship with everyone who's been participating. We've had fantastic questions and answers, great comments, wonderful intelligence brought from our audience, and we wish to honor all of you and to bring you in on the present event today, as well as future ones, and to thank you for what you have contributed in the way of your participation. Later in this program, we're going to open it up for questions and comments and invite you to speak either by telephone and or by video on your computer. All right, so next we have a phone number for you. For anyone who has phoned in and is not looking by computer, by video, we have, or anyone who's listening to a playback of this and didn't know how to get in touch with us. 360-200-7521 is basically a company recording number that gets return calls from our staff. And in the event that you have not already subscribed to our newsletter, please go and subscribe at houseoffreedomtrust.com. Put dashes between each of the words, house-of-freedom-trust.com, click on more, and then newsletter sign up. That newsletter then, of course, will come a few times a month. We'll never overload your inbox. You're welcome to unsubscribe at any time, and then you can go ahead and get news on these webinars as well as other events and important things coming forward. International Natural Law Trust, for those of you who are new to it or would like a review. This is how the cultural creatives, change makers, conscious wealth managers, and contributors to the Golden Age are quietly transacting sacred commerce through an advanced asset protection instrument, previously a best-kept secret of the super rich. Peaceful people can benefit from operating one or more of these trusts, which concentrate the best asset protection secrets of the elite into the fewest words and simplifies the language so as to minimize legalese and maximizes common politeness and understandability. These trusts can be operated in most countries anywhere in the world. Trust clients may become either trustees or creators, beneficiaries, and managers. These international pure natural law sovereign irrevocable trusts have no income tax filing requirements. They are infinitely flexible and can be adapted to any ethical, lawful, and noble purpose. They have a 100% success rate going back 3 decades, meaning they have never been penetrated or invalidated. This has been the trust of choice for those preparing for the global currency reset as the best vehicle for holding wealth and for preparing one's estate for generations to come. Heirs can be endowed with successorship seamlessly with no time delay, no probate, and no death taxes. Thousands of fortunate clients are quietly happy with these trusts. I would now like to introduce you to Randall Hillner, who is the director of our trust department at Brilliance and Commerce. He is the founder of House of Freedom Trusts, founder of White Light Unlimited, trustee of One People's Public Trust, and the creator of International Natural Law Trusts. So, without further ado, we are first going to do a short review of the last webinar, very short, and then move right into the new material. And therefore, Randall, I believe you are on. So everyone, I think you have a good view of Randall. And while he's sorting out his audio setting, I wanted to share with you that he has been pleasing everyone who has been dealing with him. He enjoys his work. He's proven his integrity over the 3 decades that we've known each other and worked together. And most of the people who have come on board with us have been in the past 7 years. And that has been a period of great education, great experience, and it's kind of a quiet community. It's a community of those who are just using the trust. And it's not glamorous. It's not necessarily flashy. It's not something that gets lots of attention. It just kind of runs in the background and does what it's supposed to do. And Randall's been consulting one-on-one with people who have been getting their questions answered, getting their assets protected, and enjoying a new level of freedom and the ability then to, guess what, create a magnet for wealth and prosperity because they now have the use of this wonderful vehicle.
Well, thank you for that. And everybody can hear me. I'm just assuming that everybody can hear me fine. And
You are heard. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good, yep. Good. Okay, so we're on. Please proceed. You're going to give the recap of the last webinar, and then we'll put the slides up for your present day presentation.
Oh.
And by the way, you're looking great.
Well, I thank you for that. It must be this Hawaiian weather that I have to live in.
Yeah, somebody has to do it.
I've just talked to a couple of clients this morning, and they were in Buffalo, and they were upstate New York, and they were in Chicago, and in Pennsylvania, and it's snowing and it's cold. And I said, thank God I'm here, and I made the right move at the right time.
Absolutely.
So I think last week,
Yeah, last month we were talking about trustees, and you had a lot of intelligence to share with us about that.
Well, I'm going to go into I'm going to literally next meeting, I'm going to redo a whole new shebang on trustees and the role they play. And today I'm going to I kind of leave it at that, but all right, so here's the situation I had this morning. I had two clients call me and they were kind of freaking out about what to do as a trustee and how to make it work properly. And I said, all it does is you make a ledger, you keep a book of minutes, whether it's a loose bound 3-hole punch process or even a hard book. And whenever one of the trustees or the trustees make a decision, it's recorded. Whenever there's an action taken, it's recorded. And then on a quarterly basis, you recap it on half a year, 6 months, you recap it again. And then at the end of the year, you definitely want to have that written out and either scan it or copy it, and it goes to every trustee. Trustees all sign on it, and you give a copy of each to however many trustees you have in your group. I just had a woman today come on she wants to be a trustee as well, so there are going to be 3 trustees. I'm involved with the group, and there are 5 of us as trustees. And the bigger your projects, the more trustees you might need to have. However, in the beginning, for a normal family setting or general 2-people process, you really only need to have 1 trustee and a successor trustee or 2 co-trustees. And you need to remember that if there are co-trustees, that 1 trustee can be related to your family, and 1 trustee has to be non-related. So you can't have 2 related trustees, otherwise there's no separation of power or assets. And that's a really delicate phenomenon, and it's really very important. So make sure that when you choose your trustees, you are one's related and one's not. Now, if you have a successor trustee, then the 1 trustee in power needs to be non-related. Can't have your sister be the trustee if it's a sole trusteeship. So you need a non-related party there. And then the successor trustee could be it's better to be non-related, but it's okay if it is related, because by that time it may be down the road a little bit and it won't really be so critical.
Would related be defined as living in the same household, or what about a
No.
second or third cousin?
Related means blood, marriage, work, employeeship, like that.
Yeah.
It's more separation you have, the more power there is in the trust as it is. So today I was going to talk about what happens if there's a dysfunction in the trusteeship. It's called transgression of trustees, or the real title is a breach of trust. So in a breach of trust, I can't see these things that you have up here because you've got everybody's picture in the way. So we've got to move them to the top or to the other side, if you can. But a breach of trust is a failure by the trustee to comply with the trust document. I mean, that's really simple, and it's in a sense, it's like any contract. When you have a contract with somebody, and if you don't follow the contract, then you've breached that contract. And it doesn't matter whether it's a corporation or an LLC or a trust. So the trustee, whatever trustee is in breach, will then be liable for that process. So part of the training of being a trustee is to make sure that they read the trust manual and that they understand that they're on the hook if they wander from the path with part of the money that belongs to the trust. I mean, it's like anything. It's the way of life, and just make sure that you are always in trust or always in contact with the trustee, and that you have a sense of really clear communication with the trustee. Like we said, Thompson said, in 35 years of doing this, and my mentor, who had been doing it for 35 years before that, we never had a process where there was need for a remedy. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes things happen and the trust won't get sued, but that's another subject that we'll leave for later on. But the idea now is that the trustees want to be in compliance. We have so many books. I think Tanzan has listed a bibliography. It's fairly intense. There are a couple of simple books that will give you some sense of what is needed. But nobody's written a really simple book to cover the basics of what it's like to be a trustee or what it's like to have a trust and how to use it. But it's all there. It's all out there. You can Google so much yourself just by looking for a topic. Okay, I have a situation, I'm trustee, I have a situation, it kind of goes like this. What does it mean if I do this and this and this? And then it comes back with somewhat of a sensible answer. And if it needs to be researched more than that, then that's when you have to dig into maybe a little bit more complex law book. Now, the trust manual covers the general parameters of that, but one of the books I have in the bibliography is a soft cover book. Oh, it's too far behind me and I won't bother to get it. But again, it's the basis of trust, and you can find those. Well, are there any bookstores available anywhere anymore? I know we don't have one here in Kauai. And
it's all online.
Everything is online, I guess. So, and I have to go to specific online places to get my law books. Um, and they're a real godsend for me because I get to really refine the process that I'm looking for so that I can bring points of topic up for discussion. And actually, that's what we'll do. I'll make up a quiz for everybody and we'll post it and we'll quiz them on what they've learned. And the answers will be in back, of course, but you'll get the idea that, oh, okay, I have this situation. What do I do? Well, you have to deal accordingly. And it's really, I mean, I've had a lot of joy in 35 years working with most of my clients. I have some, I think we all have clients that we wish we didn't have to deal with, but in general, the people that endeavor or focus on their trust will ask me honest and really qualified questions that I can say, okay, here's what you need to do. You have to do this and this and this. And you go from there. And if you have a problem, then write me another question or give me another call. It's not a problem. And I've just had 27 conversations in the last 2 days. It's been amazing. And yet most of them are very intelligent types of conversation or questions. People just starting out. An old client of mine who bought a trust 10 years ago wants to get a trust for his son now because son's 22 and he wants to start his own business and he's on his way to start that process. So I get to train this young gentleman and it's going to be a joy because I really like his father. It's, we've always had a great communication. So, I mean, you know what, Tanzan, you know what a good client is like and how it's such a joy to work with somebody that says, oh, well, what about this? Or what about this? Oh, okay, I get that. I understand. I like this. I like this. And then you have a sense of satisfaction when you get off the phone. So,
yes.
Okay, what was the next slide?
All right.
I'm sliding into the ocean.
Okay, well, so we have the next one is what remedies are available to the beneficiaries. The remedies of beneficiaries of trust are equitable in character and enforceable against trustees exercising equity powers in a court of equity.
Right. Okay, so this is a difference between the legal side and the equitable side. There are two sides of the coin. The trustees are lawful owners of the assets in the trust, but they're responsible for keeping those assets safe, secure, and if they're really good at what they do, they should be enhancing those assets as well. In other words, the proper investments, making decisions based on what would bring in more asset for the trust. And if they can't, or they're not that savvy around a particular area, then the trustees are perfectly capable of going out and finding an asset management program or, partners or a group that can, they can sit with them and say, look, we have ABC Trust that has X amount of dollars in it, and we as trustees are responsible for it, and yet we're not really savvy on the best possible way to invest this property. Now, the asset management group is under a much stricter guideline to make something happen for whoever the client is. So then they can turn those assets into the asset management group, and then they would do the work, and then they would report directly to the trustees, who would then say, okay, now we can do a quarterly payout to the beneficiaries, or every 6 months, or maybe once a year. It just depends on what the amount of money is in that asset program. I mean, it's so far reaching. It just goes out and out and out. And the broader the base, and the more savvy, let's say, the more educated the trustees get along the way, then the assets grow and grow and grow. Now, some trusts are set up so that they're written that, let's say there are two older people who are, their time is limited, and so they get the two trustees, and they say, okay, this is what we would like to have happen to this asset base once we're gone. And it may be that, let's say they have children or grandchildren that are underage, they're still minors, they still need guardianship, and so they don't get any of that asset base until sometimes people say, well, 25, or a lot of trusts that I've dealt with, people have to wait till they're 33 to receive any benefit from the trust. And by 33, usually people are either savvy to the ability to do investments, or they're not. So but it's up to them at that point. So there's all kinds of options available to the trustees and the beneficiaries and the grantors of the trust to establish that. And we can do that all with the trust document that I make up for you, and you just have to send me a list of what it is you want. I just had a client this weekend who said, I wanted to say this and this and this and this and this. And I said, not a problem. We put it in to a special minute, and it's posted in right there. It's one of the first minutes of the trust. And in it is that these funds are to be used strictly for enhancement of supporting the planet. And there was more to it than that, but that's the general gist of it. And so you can really you can add things. The basic trust indenture is all written, and it's been time tested, and it's solid, and it's a contract between three people, to grantor, or two grantors and two trustees. So 2, 3, 5 people, whatever. And it gathers power and age, like good cheese. It ages over time. And as long as the trustees are diligent and they are open to innovative ideas, and they read the right material, they talk with the right people, they can go around to asset management. There's all kinds of web pages that have asset management programs available. They just have to research what they're doing. And sometimes it's really simple. Sometimes people, an older couple may not even have any children as beneficiaries, and they want to leave it to a charity. So all I say is, all we want you to do is make sure that this is in an asset management program. And every year, if there's anything left over, if there's any profit or anything, we want to have 50%, and we want 50% go to an animal shelter or whatever it is that they want, or they may want it all to go. If they have a substantial estate, then they will say, well, we only need so much, so we'll take this much, and the rest goes out to different charities. So either another slide or questions.
Okay, we can move to the next slide. And so now we have the number 3, effective beneficiary consent. A beneficiary who consents to or ratified or released the trustee from liability for an act or omission that constitutes a breach of trust cannot hold the trustee liable for breach.
Right. That's a good one. That's really important. The beneficiaries can release the trustee from a breach of trust. However, I would probably coach the beneficiaries that they don't use that except for last resort. In other words, you want to have a remedy available through a court of equity, that if a trustee, if he loses a substantial part of the estate, you don't want that to be wasted. And so that would go back to the trustee, and the trustee would, by law now, not just equity, but by law would be liable to replace that loss.
Would you agree that although the trust itself is not subject to the jurisdiction of a court and its validity is not able to be removed by any government, nevertheless the specific actions under contract of a trustee could be litigated?
Absolutely. A trust can sue or be sued. It's in the basic part of the trust program. There may be they may, let's say the trustees decide to buy a house for the beneficiaries or for the grantors or whoever it might be, and they go and get an inspector, and the inspector says it's okay, the house is in okay shape, it's fine. But then if something happens, they may want to have some action happen where somebody has to pay for that process. If somebody falls off, if the steps break and somebody breaks a leg, then you want somebody to be held liable for that, either through the insurance or through the fact that maybe the inspector didn't look quite close enough to what was there, and so they can have that reaction. So it works both ways. Like in the car, you hit somebody, then you could be held liable for that. And if you get hit by a car, then the other car is liable for any breach. So it goes both ways. So the trust is liable to suit if it does something wrong. Now, that's a hard concept usually because assets, this is why I say never put your car into a trust or an airplane or anything that can hit something and cause damage.
Unless it's a separate trust and it's valuable enough to merit it, right?
Yes, you got a $500,000 Ferrari, then you might want to have it in its own trust, and you're still going to have insurance on it, but it keeps it separate from you. You don't want it attached to you, but you also don't want it attached to the rest of your assets.
In all your years of experience, have you ever heard of anyone with a House of Freedom Trust involved in any litigation for any reason?
No.
I didn't think so, but it's
In
available.
fact, even when I was working with Tom Martin and Val Bentley in Sacramento, we never had an action come against any of our trusts. It's really rare. It's only when you get stupid, somebody gets really stupid, then something might happen. But, so no, I've never had action. I've never had to deal with any action against any of the trust work that I've done.
Impressive record.
Hey, I'm clean. I surrender. Only the universe knows my breaches. Okay.
You
What
want to go to
else?
the next one?
Sure.
All right. This is number 4.
Whoa. I used to live there.
That's one of your houses, right?
Oh, God, I'm glad it's not.
Number 4, liability of trustee for breach of trust. A trustee who creates a breach of trust can be charged to restore the trust estate and trust distributions to the value that would have existed without the breach.
Yes. You got to make up for what you lose. And that happens in any, well, actually, I shouldn't say that because 2008 brought a big crash onto everybody and nobody got anything back. But typically, the trustee would be required to pay back what was lost through his own earnings or his own estate. It's very simple. It's just contract law. It's a great that's a great vehicle because the whole idea is it's separating assets from ownership. And typically, even with an LLC, even though you have an LLC or corporation, I believe in a corporation, the shareholders can be held responsible for some breaches. In an LLC, that's why they created, I think the states created an LLC that would release the owners of the LLC to be not held liable for something that happened within the LLC. But with a trust, unless there's a real actual breach of trust by a trustee, there is no liability to the beneficiary or to the grantor.
Okay.
So let me ask, we have 39 participants. how many of you already have a trust through Brilliance and Commerce? If you don't want to say, it's okay. Good. So a number of you are looking to learn more about how to perform efficiently within your trust work. And some of you are inquiring into, oh, do I really want to do this or not? And I highly suggest that you be willing to take a look at how a trust works and what it can do for you versus just having it in your own pocket. It's a fascinating field of work for me anyway. It's fairly complex, but then again, I just live out here on the island and eat coconuts or wait for coconuts to fall on my head as I sit underneath the tree reading my law book. Okay, so today we basically touch bases on the recourse that's available to the beneficiaries or a breach of trust by the trustees. But it's very simple and it's basic, and there's a few intricacies within it. But again, like anything else, if you keep your nose clean and you make diligent notes, then you're going to be fine. And if any of you as clients or even future clients have questions, please send your questions in and then make your decisions based on the answers that I give you for your questions. I mean, don't write a 20-page novel and ask me to respond to it, because I probably won't. Okay, questions? Who's strong enough to raise their hand? Say something.
So those of you watching by video, you know how to click on the raise hand thing. And I believe, if I remember correctly, by telephone, it's *9. And we can also accept them by chat if you want to submit it by chat.
Hey, raise hand.
All right. Well, let's go with 303 area code. You are unmuted and you are on the air.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hey, my name's Will, and about a year ago, I put the $200 down just to get the, whatever you call it, the basic trust.
The abstract.
Before I pay off. Offset?
The abstract. I gave you an abstract. It's the gist of what the trust is. It's probably what, 6 or 8 pages.
Yeah, abstract. Okay. So I've got that. Pretty soon here, I think I'm going to be getting the whole real thing. I don't really understand it. I don't really know enough to ask any questions. But at the beginning, Tansen mentioned using the trust to connect like a magnet for money. How does that work?
Trust is a money for magnet. Magnet for money.
Magnet for money, yeah.
I can just say a word, and then Randall, you can add to it if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. You go first.
Well, it's a principle in prosperity consciousness. There are courses that teach that. There's a lot of books that teach it. that if you set the vehicle, that concept, build it and they will come, you set the vehicle, and then it sets up the law of attraction, because you now have a protected place and the universe sees that you are respecting money, that you don't love it in the sense of greed, but you love it in the sense that you care about it enough to protect it so that it doesn't leak, it doesn't go to the wrong hands, it doesn't get used for destructive purposes. It gets a nice home to live in, a mansion, a palace, or a vehicle to travel in, a nice Rolls Royce or a spaceship, whatever you want to think of it as, but it's a vehicle that protects it and keeps it from, you might say, illicit or irresponsible attacks or interference from dark forces and so forth. So, and this being one of the most bulletproof, one of the most well-designed instruments for that purpose, most of us have found once we activate it and we start using it, we find that it does seem to create a nice vehicle. I'm not saying everybody's going to get rich or overnight, but it does create a nice enhancement of one's attractive power for prosperity.
I agree. When I write checks out of the trust checkbooks, people pay attention. They're like, "Oh, wow, you have a trust. You have a trust. Wow, yes. I've been interested in one of those. Can you tell me a little bit about it?" And so, might have a 5-minute chat and leave him my card, and sure enough, a week later, a couple of weeks later, I might get another note saying, "Can you give me more information? I'd like to have it." So I send him out my trust manual, and then it goes from there.
Did you have another question?
Well, I guess I have lots of questions, but like I said, I don't even know enough about which questions to ask right now.
Well, you are a House of Freedom client, so Randall will be available after the webinar,
Well, just pick one out of your hat. What's the most pressing aspect that is buzzing in your head that you don't quite understand?
Okay, I'll just ask one here at random. Say once the trust is set up, do I pay for everything with checks from the trust, or how does that work?
Okay, all right, that's a really good question, actually. The trust will pay most of the process. In other words, how I run my household is the trust pays the rent, most of the rent for the house, because it's my home office. And so let's say you can be as aggressive as you want, but let's, for the sake of this story, just say you have 70%, you have a significant home-based office. Then you would pay 70% of either of your mortgage or your rent through the use of the trust. Now, there's a contingent upon also that your business is a business and not an employeeship. You can't take your employee money and put it in trust. It doesn't work that way. So your employee money it's got to be kept separate. Now, after you pay your taxes on that, you may want to take, let's say you come away in your check and you have $100 left over, and you can take $50 and put it into the trust for storage, for safekeeping. and you take the other 50 and you put it in your pocket. But you can't use, okay, so let's start there. Now, then you've got a portfolio in your trust. You can, again, the trust can pay all your, like, your car expenses. You don't want to own you don't want to own the car. The trust doesn't want to own the car, especially if it's not worth a whole lot of money. Just keep that in your own name and have insurance on it, etc. But all your expenses around the car can be paid for by the trust, especially if your business is part of that trust. In other words, it doesn't matter what kind of business it is. You have a consulting business, you have a sales business, all of that business can be start to run out of the trust. And so anything that you use to support that business, advertising, traveling, aspects of it, typically you would pay for that through the trust. It's like having a Schedule C, except it's not you, it's the trust paying expenses. And then like my registration insurance is all paid for by the trust, and the only thing that I don't do, I mean, if I take a client to lunch, then the trust can pay for the lunch. If I take, but you don't go to 7-Eleven and buy toothpaste and socks and underwear with a trust check. The thing to do is to pay yourself a salary. You as trustee or you as manager, you can pay yourself a salary, and then you go to the bank and you cash it, and you have cash in your pocket. So just don't co-mingle. That's the big word. Don't want to co-mingle funds from the trust to your pocket. Use the trust to pay for any valid trust expenses. That's the best way to just leave it there. The trust pays for trust expenses. And you know, if I was one of your trustees, I might send you and your partner to Alaska to to check out investment possibilities, or go get some fresh salmon in the salmon run, or bring back a nice 10-point deer, whatever turns you on, whatever it is that you feel you'd like to do. You might have clients that you're entertaining, and you want to expand on your ability to enliven them into what you have to share as your business. You might go on a cruise ship, and the trust would pay for that. But just be diligent on not using trust funds to buy small items that you should just be paying yourself for. Always don't be afraid to pay yourself as manager or as a trustee.
Okay, shall we go to the next one? All right.
Sure.
Area code 403. You are unmuted. Would you like to ask your question?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, my name is Estelita, and I'm calling from Canada.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent. Nice to hear from you.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a question. Can I take the abstract to the bank to open an account for my trust?
Well, being a hoser, eh?
Pardon me?
That's a joke. I'm sorry. I hope it didn't offend you.
No.
Okay. would you give me that question again? I missed the whole train of thought.
Can she take the abstract to the bank to get an account open for it?
It would totally depend on the bank.
Well, and first of all, I think she's talking
banks,
about the unactivated trust.
Yes.
Yes, we're talking about an abstract. It's 6 or 8 pages long. Some banks will easily take that and open up an account with it, as long as you have the trustees with you. Don't go to a bank and try to expect them to open an account if you don't have the trustees. They're going to want trustee signature on both the yellow cards.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. But what if the trustee is not here in Canada at the moment, and I am the one who will be opening the trust, will be in charge of the trust?
Are you a trustee or a beneficiary? I mean,
No.
a grantor.
No, trustee.
You are a trustee.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you're a trustee, you could go to the bank by yourself with the abstract and say, I would like to open up an account, just a simple checking account for the trust. And these are the abstract papers. You can make copies of it. And
right.
Now there are 2 trustees on the page. Do you have 2 trustees?
Yes, I have a successor trustee, and I am the, yeah.
Okay, so if you only have a successor trustee, then she doesn't have to go there, because she won't necessarily be on the account until when and if something happens to you.
Right, yes. Okay. Okay, and since I live in Canada, the EIN number, I believe, is for banking purposes only?
Yes. And then
okay, so
if I've had a number of situations on this, the Canadian Revenue Service, CRS, they don't do online numbers. So they make you send in a form. I don't know what form it is. And then you have to wait for the mail for them to deliver that. In the US, if you happen to have a friend in the US, then they could easily be representative for you and go get an EIN number, and then you would have a US EIN number, and the Canadian banks typically accept that as a federal number.
Okay. So this has happened before with Canadian citizens, I believe?
I've had a couple of clients who have done it each way, and the one client that did it by mail was really frustrated because it took so long, and the other one did it, had a friend that did it for her online in the US, and it takes about 20 minutes on the online page. So I don't know if you have that available, but if you do, that's worth a try. And if you don't, then you'll just have to do the sending in through the mail.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Estelita. I just wanted to mention for newcomers that complete instructions for especially the US people come with the trust on the EIN. And it's a very exact process. It doesn't take long. It's simple and it's free. It takes about 15 minutes, but it does have to be followed precisely. And Randall provides that instruction completely in the trust, as well as backup availability of answers to questions regarding that process. All right.
It's very easy.
Next, we have Funk, F-U-N-K. You are on the air. If you would like to ask your question, welcome. Are you there? F-U-N-K. Okay, perhaps you took a break. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're there now. Hello. Welcome to the show. And what questions do you have?
I thought, I didn't think, but is this tied to the debt relief?
No, not directly, although our company provides both programs.
Oh, so you couldn't have a question about debt relief then?
Well, you would be more than
Just
welcome to ask your question in a different venue. We have the contact us on the website. If you would like to send your question in that way, we'll be very happy to answer you.
No, well, I'll ask a question about the natural trust then, because I've been listening to the whole presentation so far. The part about the trust paying for all of the expenses, whatever you result to be the expenses like in your life, how is that, and what effect does that have on, what benefits does it have from taxation?
Well, if you did it yourself, if you have, if you're filing, if you're in the system filing, then all of those expenses would not necessarily be written off, or you would, whatever is left over, you would have to pay tax on it.
Pay taxes?
Funk, you got some noise around on your end. It sounds like you're underwater or something.
Yeah, I'm driving now. I'm trying to get to a desktop, but I won't be able to.
Okay.
But I guess you can ask the question if it's a lot of noise.
Did that answer your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
He said that the trust would be accountable for taxes, or you personally? I don't understand how that works. And
It would be personally. Typically, what people do is they give any potential profit usually goes to the beneficiaries, and then the beneficiaries are responsible for their own taxes. But since they're going to get minimal amount of money compared to the whole estate, then the tax liability is sliced in half or quarters. It's very different. In fact, in the early days, we did it that way specifically so that if the trust was paying any tax at all, it paid minimal tax because the beneficiaries got the bulk of the new money.
Does that answer your question? We don't hear you. We must have lost your sound.
He went into a puddle.
Can you hear me?
Partly.
Yeah, I understand. Partly. How can you get any information about the natural trust and all of its benefits? Just to have a cursory look at it.
Oh, the best thing to do is read the ebook, which is on the website. You can download the 50-page ebook, and that should answer most of your questions. I think basically, very simply, whatever is an asset in the trust is not taxable while it's in the trust. And what Randall is explaining is that when it goes outside the trust to any other party, that party is then responsible for any taxation due. Would that be a simple way to say it, Randall?
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yes.
Okay.
So as long as the assets stay within the trust, it's not taxable.
Right.
But you can still control the assets while they're in the natural trust.
Sure. That's what the idea is. The trustees have complete control of the assets in the trust. I don't know whether if.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna have to read the 50-page ebook, so I have more pertinent questions.
Well, before you leave, can also ask Tanzan for my email, and then I can. Now, Tanzan, do you have my trust manual separated out from your book?
Yes.
So he could have both. He could have your book, and he could also have access to the trust manual. The trust manual, I would suggest, might be a place to start. It's only 15 pages, and it's not as intense. I know how prolific Tanzan is in his writing, and it takes a lot of time to study through it, but get the gist of what the whole trust process is in the trust manual. But if you want to really deeply immerse yourself, then get his ebook. And then if you really want to deeply immerse yourself, then you get his bibliography, and good luck.
Randall, if I may suggest, perhaps the best way to save your time and to allow you to continue devoting your time to your paid clients, anyone who wants the trust manual can click on Contact Us on the website, submit a help desk ticket, which is an email, and it'll go to our customer service department. Just say, would you be so kind as to send a copy of the trust manual?
Great.
And I will inform the staff that they can send that to whoever requests. It's 15 pages. And like Randall said, it'll summarize the gist of it. Yeah.
Right. And then when you're ready, you finish that and you want more, then you download Tanzan's ebook.
Okay, let's go to Pamela. You have your hand up, and Pamela, let's see. I'm going to unmute you, and you are on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
This is
Hi.
Jack Watson. This is
This
Pam,
Pam, Jack?
Pam and Jack Watson. Yes.
Pam and Jack. Okay.
Yeah, how are you doing, Randall? I have just some basic questions that I need clarification because I think we're hearing contradictions. So my first
Okay.
question, is there ever a time when more than one blood relative can be a trustee?
Sure, as long as you have 50% non-related. So if you have 2 blood relatives, then I would suggest you have 2 non-related trustees.
Okay, second part of that. Now, there is a restriction in your manual about trust that says, if I am the grantor, then my wife cannot be a trustee.
No, I didn't say that. I think I sent that to you in an email yesterday. If your wife, if Pam is a grantor, you can be one of the trustees, but you have to have a non-related second trustee.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That answers both my questions right now. And I get the idea that the most separation is best. From grantor to trustee, and also the trustees, I'm sorry, let me back up. Pam and I are the 2 people asking for the trust. That means that we're going to be the beneficiaries. Is that correct?
Okay. Do you both want to be grantors? I think
no.
I've sent you 2 emails, and just don't remember exactly the details of them, but do you both want to be the grantors, or do you want to have one of you be the grantor and one of you be a trustee?
Yes.
Okay, let me ask a backup question on that. Who gets the certificates if there's only one grantor?
The certificates go to the beneficiaries.
Okay, good.
You
Then it
can
would
vote.
be
Are you going to be
one
both
of us.
beneficiaries, or do you have children or more,
No,
or whatever?
we're going to be the beneficiaries.
Okay.
And that means that I can be the grantor and she can be one of the trustees as long as I have some friends or non-related.
Or vice versa. Doesn't matter.
Oh, true. I understand that. That's it for now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll be hearing from you and me again.
Thank you, Jack and Pamela.
Okay. I have a question for you, Pam.
Yes,
You still see Lorna?
absolutely. I just talked with her about a couple hours ago.
Okay. Well, send her my alohas.
I will do that. Take care. Aloha.
Okay.
Adios.
Thank you, Pamela. All right, so now we have area code 775. You are on the air. Do you have a question?
I do. I'm Patricia, and I just appreciate the efforts you gentlemen are making in increasing our understanding of how these trusts work. Randall has helped me do 2 of them, and actually, I just wanted to confirm the concept that one trust can actually be a grantor for another. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then it is okay for a trust to open an account with a credit union as opposed to a bank. Is that also correct?
Yes.
Good. Excellent. And then I heard you mention the trust manual, which I do have, of course. But what is the name of the 50-page ebook that is available, which I don't think I've accessed yet?
Tanzin can answer that.
Well, it's the Natural Law Trust.
Natural Law
Asset,
Trust.
asset protection for peaceful people, and it's available on the website in the trust section for download.
Okay. Is there a charge for that?
There is if you go to Amazon and buy it there, but you got it for free on the website.
Okay. Excellent. That's very great. Awesome. Free is always a good thing. Usually. And then, Randall, I had another question for you because I heard Tanza say that you were involved with the One People's Public Trust, and I just wanted to get a little bit more information about your involvement with that and the status of it at this time.
Okay, briefly, I was asked to come aboard and be a trustee since I had all this experience.
Right.
Heather was an attorney and Caleb was a code writer. So he's a code wizard, actually, I should say. And so we created the One People Trust, and we started to create paperwork and deliver it to the major banks, the Rothschild banks, Bank of New York, Bank of England. We ultimately went to Africa, filed paperwork there, did some more work, and then we went up again. We went back to Europe, and we went to Switzerland, and we went into the Bank of International Settlements and filed paperwork there. And basically, the paperwork, I don't know whether that webpage is up anymore. And I have probably 200 pages sitting on the floor collecting all kinds of stuff. But it's just basically telling the truth about the banking system and how the money has been stolen. and it's all fiat money, and it has nothing to do with gold. It's not gold backed. That's what this whole global reset program is in the, excuse me, the RV. And the idea was that we just were exposing the bankers for who they were. I mean, I didn't even think that I'd escape from England or Switzerland once we served those papers. I said, oh no, could be here for a long time. But they just took them, and it didn't go anywhere because they just don't care. They're just too big. And but it was a very mind expanding process that we went through. I think me and Caleb he had just lost his father. So we had that sense of communication. I then lost my son, so we had that communication. Then Heather. Now Heather is now in prison or in jail down on the East Coast. She went out after the OPPT. She went out and started this other process. I didn't get involved with it, but it was all around a bunch of women, and they did this TDA thing, which was writing checks on, I don't know what she did, but she definitely she got busted for it. I'm sorry?
Yeah. That Treasury Direct accounts, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And it didn't work. And so they got, anyway, but getting back to the OPPT, it was one of the most exciting times that I'd had for a long time. We got to go to Europe 4 times, and we traveled around quite a bit, and I was traveling from Hawaii, so I had to go all the way from Hawaii to the mainland and then to Europe, and it was an adventure.
I have a great deal of respect for that effort. I remember in December of 2012 when it was announced what had taken place.
Right.
And I've known about the what I call the banksters for a long time.
Yes.
And they're not too big to fail. It's just that the fiat needs to come to an end, and things have to be done appropriately on behalf of the people. But I'm really pleased to know that you were a very positive part of that process. It's my understanding also that the One People's Public Trust in March of, and I'm not sure which year, I think it was a few years ago, actually completed and was closed at that point in time because it had fulfilled its purpose.
Right.
And that's my understanding of it. And then related to that question, do these trusts have a particular time frame that they're good for? They need to be renewed or something along that line?
A number of people have different numbers, but basically I have, the number I have in the trust is 21 years after 21 years after life in being. In other words, if you have children or grandchildren, it will be 21 years after the last child dies. But then it can be renewed at any time, or it can just be disbanded. If all the beneficiaries say we want to stop this, then they can literally, the trustees can decide to disperse the assets in the trust on a pro rata basis to the beneficiaries. In other words, sometimes there's so many beneficiaries that it gets too cumbersome, so they just let it all go. And if the children want to then get their own trust, then they can do that too.
So you have the option of having it go into perpetuity in some respects, but you have the flexibility of not having to do that.
Well, yes, but in order to get around the rules of perpetuity, you have to have a time limit on it. So
right.
some people just use 25 years. At the end of 25 years, the trustees have to decide to renew it or to dissolve it. Now, I was trained that it was 21 years after the lives in being at the time that it was created.
Interesting. Okay.
It's just an interpretation. And
Randall, does that mean the lives in being are the beneficiaries or the successor trustees?
it would be the beneficiaries.
Okay.
Great. Beneficiaries.
So it can go on and on and on, but it has to be renewed purposefully.
Right. But that has an option for going on and on, which
Yes.
gives you flexibility, and I think that's the idea, isn't it? So.
Yes. And you have the choice to dissolve it also.
Right. Or it could be perhaps divested into other trusts to make it less cumbersome, perhaps, depending upon what the need was.
Sure. Let's say there's you have 4 children and they have multiple children. You can take that asset base and split it up 4 ways, and then they can start their new trust themselves for all of their children and grandchildren, etc. There's lots of ways to weave the pattern, and you just have to get used to how to do it.
Great, thank you. Well, one of the trusts actually is set up as a humanitarian vehicle to be able to use for people and for Earth. Okay, so it's really general in that respect as far as who the beneficiaries are, but it allows a lot of flexibility. And I thought the trust vehicle was preferable to some of the other more, well, I just want to stay out of the statutory and keep it private contract was the idea.
Sure. That's the whole thing. That was the whole idea of the common law trust. It came from the English law, and some countries won't recognize it, but if it's established here, you can still go to Europe and open up a bank account with it. So it has to be looked at as a valid contract between you and the trustees.
Right. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that extra enlightening information.
Thank you.
Public, so.
Thank you so much for your comments as well. Much appreciated. We have some questions in chat, Randall, and one of them is, can I be the grantor, trustee, and beneficiary? He says he cannot raise his hand or call in.
Well, yeah, as long you can be the grantor and a trustee and a beneficiary, but you have to have a non-related trustee to split, to get in there, squeeze in there, so that it holds up, because you can't be sole trustee and sole beneficiary.
So you'd also have to have other beneficiaries as well.
No, it could be one beneficiary, but you have to have a non-related trustee.
Okay. All right, and then we have this question, where was it? Will the bank ask for the trustees' SSN? For those of you in Canada, that means the Social Security number. In the US, the personal super slave number.
It depends. I've typically, that's really hard to answer, because
Depends on who's the responsible party, I guess, on the EIN
No, it's
application.
not that. It's if the trust has its own EIN number, that's really all it needs. They're just going to want to have the EIN number for the trust. And then you're going to sign as trustee, but they won't necessarily ask you for your social security number.
That has been my experience.
I've never had that experience.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just agreeing with you. That's been my experience. They never ask for my SSN.
Right. They're just looking for the EIN number.
Let's see if we have other questions. And we're right at about an hour and a half, which is approximately the time we've aimed at limiting this so it doesn't go on forever. We got one comment that says, "I love the view behind you."
Well, it's all your fault.
Let's see. I'm looking for other questions here. And looks like there's a lot of answers to your question when you asked how many had trusts. All right, well, that looks like about it. Thank you, everyone. Anything else in closing?
I see something down at the bottom, a chat question. You want to flash that up again?
Well, here's one. Okay, the PA was asking about the SSN, said on the EIN form, it asked for the trustee's SSN. That's a different thing than the bank. You would ask if the bank asked for the SSN, and the answer is no. But on the EIN, it wants the SSN of the responsible party. And Randall, you want to comment on who can be the responsible party on the EIN?
Yes, that's typically the grantor.
So not necessarily the trustee.
No, if you look at the SS4 form, if you're not familiar with it, you won't get it. But basically, you have the name of the trust and the address, and then one of the first lines is the trustee name. On the trustee name, that's all there is. It's just who the trustee is. There's no asking for number. Now you go down halfway down the page, and it asks for who the responsible party is, and then it will ask for a social security number for the responsible party, and that's typically the grantor. Now here is a subject I was talking about this morning with another client. They were saying, I don't necessarily want to be the responsible party, and I don't want to be the grantor. I want to be a trustee and then one of the beneficiaries. And I say, well, that's fine, because you can go out and ask a friend if they'd be willing to, and I had it happen in the last couple of days. I said, would you be willing to take $50 and give me your name and social security number? Now, obviously, you're going to need to know that person well enough and say, the reason I'm using it is because I want to open up a trust and I don't want to have my social security number. Are you willing to do that? And more than likely, they'll probably say fine.
Especially if they realize there's no liability.
There's no liability, because the thing about the grantor is that once the grantor signs the trust indenture part of it, there's 5 sections of the trust. But once the grantor signs that part, the grantor is done with anything to do with the trust, other than if he's a beneficiary. So he's really out of the picture. And so all he's done is given his name, and his social security number, and then he's out, except for being a beneficiary perhaps, or maybe he wants to be a trustee. In other words, I have a lot of clients come say, I don't want to be the grantor, I want to be the trustee. I say, fine, then you got to go get somebody to be the grantor that's willing to give their social security number so that you can get an EIN number for the trust. And most people don't have a problem with that.
Why don't we wrap it up? Thank you very, very kindly, unless you have further comments on that.
No, I'm just enjoying meeting all these new people. It's great.
Same here. Everyone, thank you for another wonderful fellowship today. The next one will be May 9th. Spread the word. Those of you who want to share this with friends and family, if you're not already an affiliate, join us as an affiliate. Once again, if you tuned in late and you're listening to a playback, our web address, go to the affiliate who referred you, preferably. If you don't have one or can't find it, go to houseoffreedomtrust.com. We will always trace who referred you if we can. house-of-freedom-trust.com. If you're not on the newsletter list, click on More and then Newsletter Sign Up. And if you are only connecting by telephone and didn't have contact with us before and you need a way to contact us, area code 360-200-7521. And Randall, thank you. Mahalo. Your knowledge is wonderful. Did you say you had an idea of what your topic might be next week or next month on May 9th?
Well, I barely touched on, well, we just lightly touched on the subject of the trustee transgression, and I think that's enough on that. Just know that if there's a breach of trust, that the trustee is responsible, and so just make sure your trustees are well aware that breach of trust will get them in very hot water. And what we might do next month is depending on how good the waves are and how much we get.
And we could base it somewhat on tickets that come in, questions that people ask.
Sure.
Consensus.
I mean, that's a really good idea. If there's a substantial group, if you have questions that you'd like to start off, we could start off with a question and answer process.
We could do that too.
So I'll figure something out. I've got 27 books behind me, then I've only touched on 6 or 7 of them. There's plenty of information, that's for sure.
Okay. Mahalo, Randall. Aloha. Thank you, everyone, for participating. This is Thompson. We'll be closing out. And God bless. May all prosperity, wealth, happiness, joy, peace, and enlightenment be yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to be on your show. You're a great host. And thank you, everybody that's listened and answered or asked these great questions. It just spurs me on. So thank you very much.
All right.